Hello there everybody and welcome to my tutorial for the Loth Faction in Songs of Conquest. We're going to go over their wielders, their units, their spells, their strategies, strengths and weaknesses, so you'll have a nice overview about what you're getting yourself into with these guys. Now, I want to start out, as usual, with the list of wielders we have available. This is a really important part of all of our endeavors. So, we start out with a troop movement specialist. Magnolia's skill is really special. She also starts out with some extra taxes. I love these heroes that have this. Dr. Majada, 40% spell damage power, plus comes with a specialization of Arcana Magic, rank 1, and she's your specialist for nuking stuff. Very powerful and potent hero, I can't recommend her enough. Grows a little bit cheesy over time, nevertheless. Ambertina is your destruction specialist. The interesting part about Ambertina is she can generate more essence than most right from the get-go due to the essence leech skill. You do need some magical abilities to back that up though to make these essences good for something. She comes with an extreme high offense ability and, well, I find her in pretty interesting odd nut in between, especially since Essence Leech can be gosh darn useful in the later stages of the game. When killing stuff generates more magic to work with, can be a really potent mechanism. Everybody can learn it though with random chance. So Aldous, Order Essence Specialist with combat training. So this is a pretty interesting one, as Order Essence gives you the ability to buff your units better, and the damage up, well, who doesn't like more damage? His stats are pretty balanced, biased towards defense, and pretty good all-rounder. If you want to use the buffing magic a little bit more, this specialization helps a bit, but I find it a little bit underwhelming, in all honesty. And now to the nutjob, Brother Hiller. Well, he gives your rats an HP more, but that's about it. He comes with cunning, makes the I think, yeah, it's always the first 2 rounds especially effective. Well, the problem is that rats are just the weakest troop in the Loth roster, and well, let's call him a meme wielder, unless you guys can tell me why I'm wrong. I haven't found a way of making it work, as rats suck a little bit, but maybe I'm not insane enough, or I don't have the enlightenment. Who knows? Let me know if you know. Coral Lightbringer, on the other hand, is a mobility hero, comes with movement skill. This is excellent, as this is a practically guaranteed chance of upgrading your movement further, because when you have that skill already, your level up drafts will eventually always include that skill. So this is a pretty nice thing. The range resistance on top of that makes him a really excellent wielder for pretty much every purpose. You can't go wrong with this fella here, I personally think. Murkoth, Undead Specialist with a focus on offense. Comes also with a skill for offense. Undead troops excel at running into the enemy and doing exactly what Murkoth boosts, so I personally consider him really the best choice if you would just want to run things down with your undead army. It's a pretty excellent one. Roderick I personally see as a pretty bit of an odd one. He comes with ranged resistance skill, he brings defense to human troops. The problem is the Loth human troops, they I personally didn't feel like they needed defense too much. I'm going to lose a few words when we're talking about units as well about that, but in a nutshell, personally, I feel like a range resistance skill is quite nice, but on the other hand, we can't have that right from the get-go here. Let me know if I missed something, but I feel like this is one of the least desirable ones, personally, I felt like. Wiesh, the Returned, on the other hand, is a nice one. Every specialist of a certain magic school comes in nicely. This one even brings Arcana and Order to the table, which is really cool, as this means you have a ability to learn more Order spells, which is buff magic, which really synergizes down well with the undead, and you have a little bit of extra Arcana, which brings you more utility and or nuking capabilities depending on your build. Pretty interesting wielder, and that's why I personally think Roderick and Hiller, to some extent, even Ambertina, are a little bit underwhelming compared to their competitors here. Let me know what you think. The last interesting point that I want to say is that the Loth wielders have no differences all over the board in terms of movement or view radius. The only one who has a little bit of an edge on the other people is Coral with the movement skill, but apart from that, every other faction I've made a guide for so far had some differences here. It's not the case here. Okay, let's get into the units. This is a very, very interesting ride. So, the rats. I've been already talking about them. Let's go over them quite quickly. They are fast, initiative high, and they berserk, which means when they get nicked, they hit even harder and run even faster. So the key to these beasties is that you want to trigger that berserker and then send them somewhere where they need to explode. The problem is just health 5 and really low skill offense and defense skills. It really doesn't get any better when we transform them into plague rats. They get venomous. This makes them really nasty, so they turn from a hand grenade into a sort of a Molotov cocktail with an afterburn. But they still die a lot. They retain that berserker skill, which means when they get nicked, they also even die even faster. So yeah, they kind of like come as a double-edged sword. But the clear advantages is that gosh darn troop size. You can increase that via research to really nutty the proportions, and maybe I wasn't going down the path enough with Brother Hiller yet. The real problem that I got with these guys is that they are neither human nor undead, whereas the other people here all have the human or undead tag. These beasties have none of these, so you can't even properly boost them with research beyond these two tags. That's why I personally see them as really the least attractive unit in the roster, sadly. As cool as I find the concept of them. Oathbounds, though, now we're talking good troops. So the Oathbound is a all-over-board, wonderful standard troop. Comes with decent melee and offense skills, standard damage, standard health. Movement could be a little bit higher, but on the other side, they boost their neighbors with defense, which is really cool. But once we upgrade these guys, they go really places. The upgrade isn't even, well, it is costly, but not double as much. But they gain so much damage, health, raw stats here. And they also gain the ability to defend themselves and range defense. So you get such a big cocktail of upgrades on these guys. And their troop stack size is also 40, so rats, I'm sorry about you guys. I would have really liked to love you. Cultists are your spell damage enhancers. They go hand in hand with your Oathbound stat-wise pretty much. They are really comparable. Check them out here. These numbers are very, very close to each other. Their main differences are the cultists are a tad bit faster in terms of movement. They can go further, but they are slower in initiative. And they are a little bit more on the vulnerable side, but on the other hand, they get to deal a smidge more damage. So their real sales point, though, is the spell damage power enhancer. So if you want to nuke stuff, these guys, don't miss them out. They're excellent. That song is just amazing. And beyond that, they are just a good frontline. Yes, they will die eventually, but come on, they're cultists. I think they all knew what they've been signed up to. So, use them as a alternative or a side grade to the Legionnaires, and boost your spell damage with these. Toxicologists and Banes are really interesting ranged troops. Their damage is a little bit on the low side, but and so is their range. We need to stick to the bad things first, I think. And their movement is also not too stellar, but the really interesting thing about these guys is their mobile trait. Combination with Venomous. This means they don't get any penalties when they move. This is an interesting trait, as they can fire every turn, they can reposition every turn, so their real sales point for me in your army is to inflict damage over time effects, where you need to whittle down big stacks before they can hurt your front line too much. Banes are just a little bit more of everything of the same. They just get a straight up small time upgrade. The interesting point about the advanced version is their stealthiness. This is really, really nasty, as you can position them where you need them. They can't get that higher ground without anybody interrupting them, and this makes them really, really, in my personal opinion, a pretty strong and versatile unit. On the downside, their upfront damage is really bad. They have such a low damage on their straight up projectile, but due to their venomous trait, that adds up over time. That's just a really, really nice thing to say about them. Aurelian Scholars, on the other side, are your heavy-duty ranged units. They are pretty strong on what they do. They have a decent offense skill, they have a really decent range, they have a low troop size stack though, and they are gosh darn costly. Their base model doesn't cost that much money, but the necromancers demand celestial war, which is really annoying, but they are worth it. Okay, not only do you get that really valuable arcana mana from them, they also come with really, really decent stats. They're pretty resilient elf-wise, and the defense ain't too bad, but they don't have a retaliation attack, so you really need to protect these guys. Charge Essence is a super interesting spell, though, or ability. Whenever they can't fire, they just generate double the amount of essence. And since we have some really sick essence manipulation skills as Loth players themselves, these guys can generate a lot of essence. If they can't fire, they are always useful for generating more mana to cast with. I love these guys. As they are generated in the same building as the Oath Singers, they are just a must-have for every magic-oriented build, and it's a really nice side effect. They come as as a really decent ranged unit. Scavenge Bones are excellent frontline. They are very sturdy, they have a lot of HP, they are decently far-moving, super good initiative, low troop stack size though, we must have some downsides I guess, infinite retaliations, and even increased spell damage resistance. These guys are what you should send into the enemy's melee frontline. Due to the infinite retaliations, they will always be nasty to attack in their comfort zone, and in the upgrade, the Blessed Bones receive just more of what they are already good at, and they also gain the ability to generate a temporary stack of skeletons by shedding off one troop. This sounds a little bit wonky in the first place, but 15 skeletons can be really, really nasty. So they gain a utility perspective, because sometimes filling just a slot on the battlefield can be gosh darn useful, and they retain their insane brawler abilities, which whittles down enemy front lines quite effectively, and yeah, these guys are really, really bad news to have in the front line. Spectres and Seneschals are your line breakers for the backline. Since they ignore the zone of control, and they are all in all lower in every aspect of resilience, they are really excellent though to be sent on enemies that want to shoot or are otherwise easy to pop. As you see, their damage is a little bit lower, but they gain a lot more movement, a lower initiative though. And the real interesting part about their upgrade is their ability to destroy enemies' essence next to you. So having these guys in the center of a couple of weak troops, or melee weak troops, ranged units, I think these guys are really, really excelling on. Yeah, it's these guys are really, really nasty complement to the Blessed Bones. They aren't as sturdy and resilient, but due to their high movement and their stealthiness, they can appear where the enemy don't want to have them and strike hard where you don't want to get hit. It's a really, really cool unit in my opinion. And on the top of the food chain, we got the Legions. Well, what can I say? The Loth roster is really, really all about getting straight in your face with sturdy melee units, and these guys are just the bulwark in front of the fray. Their troop stack size is really low. They have really robust stats, relatively fast movement, ranged resistance, which is quite insane. They intimidate enemies when they are close to them, and they have a AoE melee attack. Upgrading them to High Legions brings them to the ability to even protect their friends around them, which makes them just an excellent complement for any frontline you just rush your enemies into, with which you just rush into your enemies. They are really hard to kill, and their only downside is their low availability per stack size, and those costs. Seriously, the amount of amber and gold that you need to rise these up is quite insane. Let's have a quick word about the Risen. Human troops of the Loth roster, when they die, you get them back as Risen, because they've taken the oath to the Empress Aurelia to serve in life and in death. You gain these relatively useless units. In the first place, you might think so, but it is, as a matter of fact, worth saving them up and not wasting them. Their troop size stacks, their stack size is beyond insane. There is almost no troop in the game that you can't stack to this point. They have 15 health, which makes them relatively sturdy, given their offense and defense sucks. Their movement sucks. Their damage is for a tier 1 unit quite okay, I presume, but they are super immobile. But we can upgrade undead units pretty straight up directly, and they are flagged as undead units. So that means if you ever gain Risen, it is worth considering them, transferring them to another hero who saves them up for a really difficult fight. And when you have upgraded your undead to a certain point where you have a couple of these technologies, Risen can turn into a real factor. Give them to a hero that boosts undead even further, and you won't be you will be surprised what these little zombie dudes can suddenly do. Okay, enough about that. Let's talk magic. So the Loth have access to Order, Destruction, and Arcana. So Order brings us some really nice ways of boosting our resilience, which is amazing given the fact what kind of a gosh darn sturdy frontline we already have. So Protection is an excellent spell to add more of the same on top of that. Quicken is amazing as our troops often lack in movement, but already have a really high initiative. Lots of Lost troops boast with a pretty high initiative. This makes it even harder for the enemy to top that. Pacify is one hell of a debuff. A skilled order magic wielder can do so much indirect damage by just debuffing the hell out of the strongest stack of the enemy in the right moment. This can be devastating. I love that one. And Rally, well, come on. Boost your own army all over the board with just stats that everybody wants to have. Hell yeah, sign me in. The only thing is that order mana is a little bit lower, or is a little bit hard to generate. They are, if I have counted correctly, Order is the rarest color in the Loth Troops roster. Now, Destruction brings us straight up what the name implies. We can boost the offensive skills of our troops. Again, really cool, as we have a lot of frontline, and boosting the damage where it matters is a really nice gimmick, especially since we can have that for up to 3 troops in one go. Sabotage, I love that spell. It's always for the entire enemy army, and it just softens them up in a way that you almost always want to cast that spell in the right moment. It can be really game-changing. Ice Bolt is a decent one. Its damage is really cool, and the the initiative and troop movement debuffs are insane. If you are not too skilled in damage dealing with spell casting, it still remains a very useful utility spell. Fireball, well, enough said. Straight up nuke, really powerful when you have the spell power behind it, not so much if you don't. Most spells excel then for a unskilled wielder in chaos magic or destruction magic, not so much of a desirable spell. Arcana is really powerful for the Loth faction, in my humble opinion, for everybody. Psychic Spear is a relatively underwhelming single target nuke, but it's better than not using your Arcana essence at all, I guess. But we're talking business from Dimensional Door on. This thing is amazing, as we have slow but hard-hitting troops, we have troops that love to be in the back line, we have troops that can benefit from certain positioning so much, and Dimensional Door opens up the options for all of these strategies. It's a lovely spell, don't sleep on it. It's one of the most powerful spells in the entire game. Repel is pretty much Dimensional Door backwards. Sometimes it can be really useful to just remove somebody out of your face. So you have these tools at your hand. This kind of manipulation goes places. Arcane Storm, for a wielder that is good at nuking stuff, this is a real insane powerhouse. It's much bigger than Fireball, and, well, more zaps. It's amazing. Loth has so much destructive potential with Destruction and Arcana Essence together. It is amazing. So, let's talk the diets. We have Strengthen Essence, which is increasing the generation of essence on a troop. Smack that on your necromancers and get an insane payoff when they start channeling mana yet again. Once you get better at Arcana and Order, this spell is really quite insane, as you start to spend some essence to earn more essence. And due to the duration increases, eventually the spell, it's just straight profit on many troops. It's amazing. And Destroy Essence is the counterpart that we have access to. These two spells alone allow Loth to take so much influence on which spells get cast and which are not. This is really nasty. Don't forget that the Seneschals also control the enemy's essence flow to some degree, and with that stuff you can really do some damage. And if you know that the enemy's nuke spells hurt you, for example, you can select which troops generate that essence and hamper their generation. It is a really nasty one, and can really be useful. Aegis, well, ranged resistance boost for several troops. It is one spell that if you need it, you feel it, and if you feel it, you are really enjoying it. It's a wonderful spell if you have to rush down some ranged punks, and enough said. I really enjoy that one. Justice is one nasty spell in the Book of Loth. Killing one unit doesn't sound much, but this is the counter agent to most high-end troops. The dragons of the Rana faction come in stack sizes of 3. A Order and Destruction magic specialist could destroy these guys outright. Justice is very costly, sometimes quite situational, admittedly, but use this on the highest ranking stacks on the enemy, and ouchies. It is really worth pumping Order and Destruction magic up for this spell, since you can cripple the strongest troops with that spell, and, well, it makes fighting you always a painful experience. Speaking about pain, bring in Rupture. So, Rupture is an amazing spell. Every wielder focusing into Arcana and Destruction can do so much damage with that one. Add in some extra spell damage and you are nuking stuff. That's pretty nasty. And last but not least, we have Rapid Fire. We have only 2 ranged units, but these are both tier 2 ranged units. So, while the Loth roster's ranged troops are not too exciting in the first place, this spell is pumping up the bar a lot, as, well, double attacks are double attacks, you see. There's not much to say about that, and since all of your troops are pretty strong on that end, you have no low quality troops, you have no troops that need to reload or stuff like that. One troop is very mobile, the other troop has a pretty high range. Yeah, you can deal a lot of damage with that one. Alright, let's talk economy and strategy. So, the Loth faction has an insane hunger for amber. Sadly, your highest ranking troops eat amber like crazy. So 2 amber per troop, 1 amber per troop at that point. Also, we require celestial ore for the necromancers. Since necromancers are such a good unit, Well, if you don't want them, or if you go for a different path, you can save those costs, but these two resources will haunt you in one way or another, as Celestial Ore is not only necessary for the Necromancers, it sadly comes up in the stack size researches quite a lot. Or where was it? Yeah, here. So, human troop research requires Celestial Ore quite a lot, so this stuff is, in that end, if you want to go for human troops, Celestial Ore will become a topic. Glimmerweave is mostly used for research, I must say exclusively, but you can get so much payoff out of that stuff. You can upgrade the undead troops with Glimmerweave quite effectively, and since you have in your whole economy pretty much no other point, I don't know if I'm missing out one or two buildings, but in a nutshell, Glimmerweave is almost only used for research. This opens up the field of boosting your undead units right from the get-go. Which brings me up to the strategy part. So, Loth is so biased towards undead units. They are so strong. You can easily make up a strong army out of Oathbound, Scavenged Bones, Spectres, and Legions, and some Risen Between alone. You don't need that much more. They are gosh darn hard to kill. They have the ability to inflict so much damage, and since you can focus your research efforts into the undead alone, you even have a high efficiency on your troops if you go down that way. You have wielders that boast this strategy even, or boost this strategy even further, and yeah, pure undead is a playable way. The other way that I see is including the necromancers and the cultists into the fray. At that point, it is up to you if you just want to use cultists and necromancers as a side grade for your spell casting abilities. In that scenario, you can overgo the human upgrades entirely, as I don't see too much benefit in that road. But if you decide to opt out of the undead, which is quite a heavy thing, or you opt into the toxicologists on a side city and you keep those guys in, which I would strongly recommend. But if you would want to build a human-centered build, I'd strongly recommend recycling around the toxicologists and the necromancers, as I see in this field the strongest capabilities for Loth, as you will always gain the cultists when you have the necromancers. Can't have these separated from one another. It is just such a fun package. In no build, sadly, I can't really recommend the rats. I'm so sad about it, but they excel at being available early in high numbers. So if you really need to fight yourself out of a desperate situation early on, they would be a decent decision to some degree, but they quickly get... The skeletons outscale them so gosh darn fast and can be upgraded, so until the rats get some way to be upgraded, I must say, I don't know why they are in the roster. Yes, I'm that extreme with my opinion. Sad, but I cannot sugarcoat it when it's right in front of me. Sorry, you guys want my honest opinion, don't you? Now, but to stay on topic, going into a human-centric strategy is interesting insofar as you have one hell of a ranged roster available. You have super strong ranged attackers, you have magic damage boosts, and you can use your undead, for example, if you would go just for the tier 1s, as your front line tanks that just hold the line and keep up the business while your ranged dudes do the heavy lifting. I'd personally strongly recommend fixing in some scavenged bones into some human-centric build, as they make an excellent front line to protect your ranged units, since they are just excellent by standing in the path of something and waiting for something to attack them. They're happy with that. The upgraded version of them is even excelling at the bodyguard job, as if there's one square that needs to be covered, you can cover it in a pinch, which is really strong in that strategy. You shouldn't sleep on that. Now, legions always are good. Legions sadly cost you a large building slot and block you from researching, and that sucks. But if you have enough large slots, or you are willing to forego your research for that, these bad boys hit hard. But I must say, I really feel like going for research focused, or focus into research more would be a wiser choice. Now, I've lost enough words about these guys. I really want to say thanks for watching. Drop me your comments down below. Leave me your thumbs up. Consider subscribing. And feel free to check out the description box where you find a playlist link to the other Songs of Conquest tutorials I've made. Thanks for being around. Feel free to support Icon Gaming financially. There's a couple of links down there. PayPal, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube channel membership, yada yada. Thanks a lot for all of you who are supporting actively, and thanks a lot for still hanging out to the end of the video. See you all next time. Bye bye.